Good morning, everyone. As folks are joining in the room here, we have a great session here together um, to start your day off with, to start your Thursday off with. My name is Paul Mittner, and I work for the University of Missouri Human Resources and the Learning and Organizational Development team. And particularly, I want to mention that my colleague, Susan Groshong, she has worked behind the scenes pretty diligently to bring all the different sessions that have come together this week for Staff Recognition Week. So if you know her or you see her or you get a chance to interact with her, send her a note telling her thank you for a session that you've enjoyed, and hopefully you've been able to attend multiple of our sessions during this week. There are still some throughout the rest of the day. So if you would like to attend any more, feel free to take advantage of that. I want to quickly introduce our presenter today as folks are joining into the chat and joining into the room. Today we have Brianna Larimer, who's going to talk to us about the topic practical tips for remaining proactive. And she's mentioned that she's planning on, it's mentioned to me, she's planning on using the chat to be interactive this morning. So if you are at a place where you can use your keyboard, I think it's great to open the chat function and so that you can take advantage of the questions that she's going to be bringing to you. I will be here throughout the session. I probably will have my camera off because it makes sure my internet access stays pretty good. So I will be here, and if any questions or any concerns, please let me know. But without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Brianna.
Well, thank you, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Let me tell you, if you are in that B, C, or D category, all right, we're going to fill your tanks up this morning. Okay, we're going to have some positivity and some sunshine, even on this cloudy, dreary Columbia day. So I want to just say a special thank you to Paul and to Susan for putting together these training opportunities, and happy Staff Recognition Week. I know as a trainer myself how difficult it is sometimes to corral everything together. So again, my appreciation to Paul and to Susan for making all of this stuff happen. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. While I'm doing that, I encourage you, if you haven't seen it in the chat, go ahead and let me know, what is your internal weather like today? Are we sunny and 75? If so, I'm coming to your place. All right, are we partly cloudy or maybe cloudy with a chance for rain? Or hope not for anybody, thunderstorms roaring. And so let me know. I'm curious to hear from you. Another thing that I would love, if you have an opportunity to do it, obviously you might be able to tell I'm working from my home today, and I don't see that many faces anymore, although we are transitioning back into the office, so I'm looking forward to that. But if you have cameras, please turn your camera on. I would certainly love to see your face. Being we have a larger group, I probably won't be able to open up microphones, but that's where that chat function comes into play. So just be prepared. I will be prompting you throughout the session with different chats. So thanks, Cindy. Thanks for turning on your camera. So to go ahead and jump into it, again, today you're here for practical tips for remaining proactive. And let me tell you just the basis for this idea. It came shortly after March of last year. And we were in a quick hustle and bustle trying to figure out how we were going to change into this virtual environment. And it became very apparent that we needed something that really pushed us to remain resilient during all of the changes. And so I started thinking, how can we really dive into this idea of proactivity and use it to our advantage? So let me back up and tell you a little bit about who we are. I am part of Missouri Training Institute. Again, my name is Brianna Larimer for those who are just joining us. And Missouri Training Institute is part of Extension, University of Missouri Extension. We are the extension arm of the True-Last College of Business. And so we take all the information that comes out of that college out to the residents of Missouri. And let me tell you, in this virtual environment, it is well beyond that now as too. I had a soup series a couple months ago that we did, and I had a guy join us from Alaska, someone from Minnesota, and it's pretty incredible what this this virtual environment allows us now. here's our team. This is our small but mighty team. Some of you probably participated in some trainings with Dewey Thompson, our director, or Ray Lyon there, our associate director. She hosted one yesterday on accountability. And so we make up Missouri Training Institute. And the one thing that differentiates us between a lot of other organizations is we love what we do. All right, we're passionate about what we do, and we really appreciate and value bringing good content to those who need it most. You know, we have open enrollment trainings, and our open enrollment trainings are open to the public. These are sessions we typically work with clients. However, we do have some of these opportunities where anybody who's interested can sign up. I put a QR code on your screen if you're interested in more information. If you're not familiar with QR codes, open up your camera and just take a quick scan of that, that QR code. It will take you directly to the website so you can get more information on those open enrollments. My background's a little different. So I am a business trainer and consultant now. I started out in journalism. And so I certainly have kind of the interest in this virtual environment, and I love being able to bring new opportunities. And so we decided to start a podcast as well. So if you are interested in a podcast, we have the Weekly Workplace. It is available online on Spotify and Podbean. And we also do Facebook live chat. So if you're just looking for ways to continue your professional development, the open enrollments, there are fees associated, but the podcast and the Facebook lives, those are all free and open to you. And we would love for you all to come along on those journeys with us. So again, on your screen, you'll see QR codes to either download those podcasts or to join us for a Facebook Live event. And we actually have one today. We will have a Facebook Live today. It's on emotional intelligence at 1 p.m. So if you scan that QR code, it would go directly to our page where you could join us. So lots of opportunities. Again, love that we can bring these during Staff Recognition Week. And I'm going to push you and challenge you to go out beyond Staff Recognition Week with your professional development, because we have to be avid learners, With that, I'm going to go ahead and pause for a second. I want to just kind of gauge our chat again. Oh, thanks, Jessica. Listen to the first one, my first podcast ever. Thank you. I appreciate you listening. Seeing a lot of cloudies in today. Some sunnies. I'll say hi to Dewey. Absolutely, Ivy, I'll do that. Yeah, you know, I'm thinking about my question I posed there in the chat, the internal weather. As I mentioned, I tend to ebb and flow with what we have going on outside. Some of you may be like that as well. And so again, today's session is truly trying to just fill your tank. All right, I want us to be able to recognize where we're at right now and where we want to be when it comes to this idea of proactivity. So to jump in, I want to ask you your preference, and I'll go ahead and use chat for this again. Okay, so if you were going boating, we are getting ready to hit summertime, which is so exciting. Which item would you prefer to have with you? Would you want the life vest or the life buoy? Maybe some of you will say, hey, I want both. All right, go ahead and list your responses for me in the chat, please. All right, I'm seeing a lot of them come through. Thank you all. Y'all are quick. Both, lots of A's, some B's, lots of boths. Okay. All right. You know, you might think as I'm asking this, it's like, come on, duh, Brianna, duh. You know, we would want both, and I think that's a perfectly acceptable response. Personally, I'm putting the life vest on. All right. And I ask this because when we think about this particular metaphor of a life vest and a life buoy, this gives life to this idea of proactivity versus reactivity. All right, when we think about it, we put life vests on before, or maybe as soon as we get on to the boat. right? We are proactively planning for the chance that something could happen, that we would need that life-saving device, right? A little bit different with the life buoy when you think about what it's used for in some ways. All right. A lot of times life buoys are thrown to people once you're already in the water, right? And so when we think about that, when we consider that idea that life buoy is more of a reactive device, right? A product of my circumstances. We got dumped into the water and now I need someone to run in and kind of save. So if we were having the forethought and the proactivity, we might have put the life vest on before. Right, and that's where we're kind of heading with this idea of proactivity versus reactivity this morning. And I'm going to throw these practical tips at you. It's going to be very practical. It's going to be some things that you're going to look at and say, well, I am doing some of this. All right. And I'm going to challenge you to just be more intentional and just put more forethought into those opportunities. Because again, we don't want to be throwing the life buoy. We want to have that life vest on. A lot of the ideas today, and I'll tell you again, this when we created this idea for this particular training topic, it was looking at Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. If you're not familiar with it, I encourage you to pick it up. This is Senior Covey Senior, one of the first books, and he did a remarkable job really simplifying what we needed to do to be successful. And the very first habit was being proactive. All right. And he says that he's not a product of his circumstances, right? He's a product of his decisions. And I'm going to challenge each and every one of us today to think about that. All right. We have had a tumultuous last year. All right. So first and foremost, kudos to you for getting through it. All right. Maybe some of us are still in the transition right now, trying to still manage through what the hands we've been dealt. It's been a tough year. All right. We are not products of those circumstances, though. I want to encourage you and I want you to recognize that you can have control in the midst of all of that uncertainty. And it comes down to the decisions that you make. All right. So I want to play this quick video, and this will kind of depict Stephen Covey's, Dr. Covey's idea behind being proactive. I really like the illustration here. Let me know if you have any issues with the audio.
Habit 1 is be proactive. Let's look at something called the circle of concern and the circle of influence. The circle of concern consists of all the things that are out of your control, like the weather, politics, what people think of you, the economy, other people's mistakes, and other people's opinions. The circle of influence consists of all the things you can control, your attitude, what you read, what skills you learn, your enthusiasm, how you spend your free time and who you spend it with, your habits and hobbies, and so on. With that said, there are 2 ways to live life. You can either be reactive or proactive. Reactive people complain about the things that are out of their control. Their environment and outside forces affect their performance and their mood. Additionally, they don't take action or ownership of the things that they can control. And then you have the other type of person. They are proactive. This type of person realizes that their decisions determine their life, not their conditions. Proactive people don't complain about things they can't control. Additionally, they take action to improve the things that they can control. Proactive people understand that sometimes we may not have complete control over a certain situation, but we can control how we respond to a situation. So let's look at an example
All right.
of how a proactive and a reactive.
I truly think that it does a really good job articulating exactly what we're talking about here, right? The differences between proactivity and reactivity, the difference between the life vest and the life buoy. And I really value one of the things that Dr. Covey mentions in this book, and it's that idea of the gap where we have the freedom to choose. All right, in the midst of, again, all the uncertainty, all the things that seem to or could seem like they are happening to us, right? Things that we feel like we may have no control over. We do have control over one thing. We do have choice in one thing, and it's how we respond to it. All right, it's how we respond to it. So when we look at this graphic, and this came from the Franklin Covey site, but we have all of this stimuli circling around us, right? We have all of these things that trigger something in us, whether good or bad, right? We decide based off the information we have, maybe based off of our backgrounds, our experiences, our values, our ethics, what makes us us. There are stimuli that will affect all of us differently. All right, but we have these 4 unique human gifts. All right, during that gap right there, before the stimuli turns into a response, right here in this choice, this freedom to choose space, we look at ourselves. Okay, we look at who is it that we want to be, our self-awareness. We have to be in tune enough with who we are as people and how we want to be perceived, all right, to be able to then determine what response we'd like to have. We can also look at our imagination. What opportunities are there? What are ways that we can turn this, maybe the setback or this triggering stimuli into something beyond what we ever could have imagined? All right, maybe we use our conscience. We use our conscience in a way to know right from wrong. All right, if I respond this way, all right, it's not going to fare well, right? So we can use our conscience, and we have independent will. That's the nice place about this particular point between stimuli and response, is that we can use our independent will despite all of the circumstances surrounding us. We have the freedom to choose. All right, and I think that this is important as we move forward. A lot of times we think being proactive means we have to always think ahead of the game. And in a way, yes, you want to be prepared. That's part of it. However, it's also being self-aware enough, being cognizant enough of what those stimuli are, and then pausing to decide how you would like to choose before you simply react. All right, because what happens a lot of times is we do just react, and we don't have that control factor. We feel like we've lost it. So if we are choosing how to respond versus simply reacting, power is back on us. All right, and that will help us gain momentum to continue to move forward for every new triggering stimuli. All right, so think about that, right? The idea behind this is we are going to try and regain control despite the circumstances around us. There are certain features of proactivity. All right, there are certain things, kind of the umbrella, if you will, to being proactive. You do want to have a sense of anticipatory knowledge, right? That preparedness we talked about. Are you acting in advance of those future situations? Well, to know what potential future situations there are, you got to be thinking about them, right? We have to be considering and anticipating what might happen. All right, we also need to be looking at moving forward on our own. All right, we don't need to be waiting for others to help us in changes that need to be made. All right, we have to be change-oriented individuals to be proactive. All right, that means kind of jumping on the horse and saying, all right, here we go, and maybe not knowing exactly where that horse is going right away. All right, but waiting for the guy at the barn to say, you got to get on now, time to go. All right, proactive folks really look at jumping towards things rather than waiting to be told. Okay, and let me just pause for a minute and tell you, I'm not great with change. Okay, I'm not great with change, but I do find myself to be a highly proactive person. But change is hard, so it's okay to not be okay with change, but to understand that it's time to go when it's time to go. All right, that you don't need to wait for someone else to tell you what to do or how to do it. All right, that's part of proactivity. We also have to have a little bit of that self-initiation. Okay, again, not waiting to be given all of those detailed instructions. Now, I say use that sparingly. Okay, use it sparingly, because what can happen sometimes if you're incredibly self-initiated and you use it too much to a strength, you may go through a whole process and then submit it and think everything's great. And then it all comes crashing down because we didn't maybe get the right insights or collect enough information before we started out down that path. So no, we don't need necessarily detailed instructions or someone to hold our hand on those projects, but we got to be careful enough to think about, have I collected enough information to understand what other people are truly asking of me in this circumstance? Okay. So I want to pause. Paul, are there any questions that have come in so far?
No, we had a great group of folks sharing about life vests and life buoys, but no questions so far.
Okay, all right, thanks, Paul. So with all of that in mind, all right, here's kind of where we jump into this practical tip piece. Okay, I want us to really think about what are some ways we can start practicing this idea of being proactive. And some of them are simple, all right? The first step, and we're gonna break all of these out in the next few slides. All right, got a lot of content for you. But the first step is really understanding who you are. All right, remember that self-awareness piece when you see in that freedom to choose area. We need to know who we are. We need to know what we bring to the table. We also need to understand what we have control over and take control over those things. We don't have control over everything. All right, but there are especially a couple different areas, and we'll talk about these, that I really believe once we start mastering, possibilities are endless. Okay, possibilities are endless. We have to be able to be self-confident. All right, part of proactivity does require us to have some sense of self-confidence in the next steps, right? The decisions that we're making, those choices that we're making. So we have to work on building self-confidence. If maybe you're not as self-confident as others, that's okay. It's a skill that can be developed, all right? And not maybe right away, but through time and intentional practice. All right, and we have to be willing to track and to strategize. Okay, we need to figure out maybe what barriers are in place, what have we come up against, and then how do we need to re-navigate or reorient this idea of proactivity. So the first one, again, understanding who am I, who we are, right? Who you are. And this can be done a lot of different ways. The first one is trial and error. All right. As you've gone through your life, chances are you've done a lot of things. All right. Maybe some things worked out for the better, and maybe some things didn't. All right. And one thing to keep in mind, if you've been trying something, usually I think 90 days is a good time frame to really determine whether or not this is maybe a strength for you. If after 90 days, it still feels like you're trying to do it and maybe not adjusting and becoming more of a regularity, you might want to try something different. Okay, so that's kind of a good window of parameters, I guess, if you will, for understanding the trial and error element. And that varies depending on, again, what it is that you're stepping into. But, I can remember when my previous career, I actually worked at the Columbia Police Department as their public information officer. And after everything, I loved what I did there as well. It was a perfect balance between journalism and the justice system, which I had previously worked in as a deputy juvenile officer. And at one point, they kind of moved everybody around. And my job, as I knew it, didn't exist anymore. So I ended up transitioning into another field there at the police department to stay on with them as an administrative technician. And for somebody who is highly energetic and highly values relationships and communication with people, that job, which I did stay in for just about 90 days, that particular job was more of independent, staying by yourself, getting payroll done and financials done, and it wasn't for me. I tried it, right? I was proactive in recognizing that things were transitioning within the department and I needed to figure out what I was going to do to maintain a job. However, it wasn't right for me. All right, so trial and error and giving yourself grace enough to know that it's okay. We're not going to be great at everything, and that's okay. All right, maybe it's going to take you asking someone what you're good at. All right, maybe it's going to take asking them, looking at my clock here. Okay, yeah, we started at 8:30. I'm like, oh my goodness. So maybe it's going to take asking somebody what strengths you may bring to the table. All right, what strengths you bring. And I'll tell you, this was my first opportunity. I got a mentor for the first time just before the pandemic hit. And we were really trying to figure out, where did I want to build myself in my professional career? And she brought out strengths that I never even anticipated I had, and things that she saw that I didn't see in myself. So it's okay to ask. And maybe ask not just a mentor, but people who are close to you. Asking family members, asking even a supervisor, what are some things maybe you're seeing in me, and having that conversation. Maybe you take a personality assessment. Right, there are tons of them out there. At MTI, we are certified in Clifton Strengths. We're certified in emotional intelligence. Some folks are interested in the DISC assessment. We aren't certified in that there, but that's an opportunity out there. And that will help kind of provide you a guide for things that, again, maybe you're not seeing at surface, at face value. All right, things that you have going on internally or subconsciously that haven't just manifested themselves yet. So those personality assessments are good for that. All right, you gotta also kind of self-eval. And this is where it requires us to be really honest with ourselves. Okay. When I was in that role, what I mentioned earlier is the administrative technician, man, the go-getter in me says, I don't want to give up on this. I'm not going to give up on this, right? I don't like to leave positions after only 90 days. But it took a lot of self-reflection to recognize, all right, I am no value in this position if I'm not enjoying what I do every single day. All right, maybe there's someone else out there who could. And so be willing to evaluate yourself and be real with yourself about what strengths you have and what you can bring to the table. All right, the next piece, right? Taking control of those things you can. This is probably one of my favorite elements of this whole training. So if you take nothing else away, please take this away. All right, there are things that we have control over. They kind of mentioned it in that video we played at the beginning. All right, and I'm gonna just break it down even further. I think there are really two main things that we have control over in our life. The very first one is your attitude. All right, you get to control your attitude. You get to walk into a room and decide what mood you're going to present. You get to make decisions about yourself, about other people, your attitude towards those other people. All right, you control that. So to kind of pause and reflect on maybe what your attitude is saying, think about your self-talk. All right, what are some things that your self-talk says? When I first started out at MTI, as I mentioned, my background isn't in training, isn't putting curriculum together. And so I can remember several times during those first few months as I'm putting new pieces together, or I mess up in a training, and I'd say to myself, oh, you're such a dummy, right? Oh, man, not good, right? Not good for myself. And certainly not good for the clients that I was working with, because now I'm internalizing that. So what's your self-talk saying? All right, take audit, pause and take audit. Think about what you're consuming. You know, a lot of us over the last year, and I say this again with my background being in journalism, but a lot of us over the last year really started paying attention to the news. All right. Good, use it sparingly. All right, and I say that again as a former reporter, because we need to be cognizant of what we're consuming. And unfortunately, a lot of news out there nowadays is negative. All right, and I believe junk in, junk out. So if I'm consuming that, all right, then I'm going to be then putting that back out to other people. And so we need to be cognizant. Are we doing things that are uplifting, or things that we value? Are we associating with folks who are good for us and good for our goals and where we want to be as professional individuals too. All right. Again, junk in, junk out. It's the same with not just what you're consuming, but who you associate with too. All right. So take control of those things. Do an audit. Figure out, again, where is your attitude at right now? All right. The other thing you need to consider when we think about this idea of attitude is sometimes we get into the hustle and bustle of maybe just general responsibilities, and those busy tasks, all right, those things that kind of consume a lot of our time maybe aren't on track with our long-term goals. And so we need to be cognizant of acting with purpose, because if we're acting with purpose and in alignment with those long-term goals that we want, then our attitude's we're going to feel better about it. Our attitude and our emotional response to the activities that we're working on will be more positive. All right, because we know kind of in the grander scheme of it, we're getting close to our goal. So act with purpose and kind of remove maybe some of that busy work that we all have going on a daily basis. Move past your limits. All right. Be willing to jump into new things, not knowing what's going to happen. All right. When we, again, transition to MTI, we're a team of 3, and our sole, like our big money maker, if you will, over 30 years at MTI was always in-person trainings. So when we had to move to a virtual environment last year, what? But we moved. And within 2 weeks after the university all being shut down, we had a webinar out there, and we were doing what we knew how to do, the best we knew how to do it. We had no idea what was going to happen. Okay. So we had no expectations of results. We just knew we had to do something. Okay. Take action. All right. Use any of those setbacks. We learned a lot along the way. All right. A lot of things we did wrong. We used that to improve. Okay. We had to be willing to just relax for a moment, because when we're in those highly stressful situations, again, when we're trying to maybe navigate that proactivity a little bit, we can sometimes get very serious. All right. So how are you kind of taking a step back and just finding the fun again? I'm so grateful for Ray. And again, if any of you have been on trainings with her, you know, Ray is like a bucket full of fun. Okay, she really is. And she brings that to our team. And anytime I get too down in the weeds about stuff, she'll kind of make me look up and say, okay, we need to make this fun, Brianna. And I value that. So I hope you can maybe find an accountability partner that will do that with you too, if maybe you're a little bit more on the serious end. Forgive yourself. Okay, forgive yourself. I am never, as a child, my dream was to be a professional wrestler. Okay, I wanted to be in the WWE. At the time, it was WWF, right? I recognize I have limitations. That's not going to happen. Forgive yourself. Okay, it's okay. It's okay. And I'm pretty excited about who I am with not being a WWE superstar. Okay, think about that with others, because you're also going to have people that maybe don't work to the same standards that you do. Forgive them. Okay, it's okay. They don't have to be you. How boring would that be, right? We don't want to work with a bunch of people who are exactly like ourselves. An organization doesn't want a bunch of people who are exactly like each other. All right, so forgive the limitations of others. That will also, again, do it kind of for your own attitude. All right, instead of carrying around that anger, that hostility, that frustration, that stress, you're able to just put it aside and forgive them. I think about the other day I was caught in traffic, and it seems like, I think it was Friday, graduation weekend, and I'm driving and I have my son in the car, and I'm a not brand new, I guess he's 9 months old now. So fairly new mom, and I'm very obviously mama bear like, but we're driving and here somebody pulls out right in front of us, right in front of us. I'm slamming on the brakes. My son's in the background just singing, because that's what he does. And I thought to myself immediately, my first reaction was to not say so kind words, right? And then I thought about it, and I'm like, nope, Nope, we're going to change it. We're going to change this. Okay. Change the self-talk to, oh, they must just be needing to get to the graduation, right? They're just needing to get to the graduation. And I did that not for them, okay? I'm forgiving them, all right? I'm gonna understand that they got things going on too. And I did that for me because it helped my own attitude, all right? We also need to be willing to say thank you. When we have an attitude of gratitude, even for things that we may not like, all right? Accepting feedback sometimes, say thank you. All right, because it might have taken a lot on the other end of that person to even give you the feedback in the first place. So say thank you. All right, that helps your attitude. The next element to this is effort. So I believe you can control your attitude and your effort. And of course, being a former, still a WWE fan, I'm going to bring in one of my favorite quotes by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. All right, be humble, be hungry, and always be the hardest worker in the room. I have this actually posted in my office, so I can see it every day when I start work, because this speaks directly to the effort I'm going to give that day. All right, have you set goals? Do you know what you're trying to accomplish? Not just short term, but long term as well. Are you committed to those goals? Are you committed to getting those results? You know, a lot of times what happens, and I'll jump out of the professional spectrum, but into a personal spectrum, and use one of the most tragic things that happens to a lot of us, right? We set goals at the beginning of every year. For me, it's always, right, get to the gym more. Well, I go to the gym in the morning because that's when the time allows. But the very first time I hit snooze, I'm telling myself that I'm not committed to the results that I'd like to achieve from going to the gym. So think about it. How committed are you to the results that you're wanting to achieve, to the goals that you've set for yourself? Are you rejecting complacency? Okay. And here's the thing about complacency. It's different than being content. All right. Complacency is different than being content. Complacency is, in my own personal opinion, all right, another word for it is kind of being lazy. And I say that because if we have something going on that maybe we don't like and we don't want to put the work in to changing it, we're complacent. Okay. Being content means you're good with where you're at. You're enjoying the situation as a whole. All right. There's not a desire or a need to necessarily change anything. You're content. All right. So reject complacency. If you're content, you're content. All right. And always adopt a growth mindset. And let's talk about this growth mindset real quick. As we age, we don't always take this in or take this at face value as much as we need to. We can never stop being learners. We can never stop growing our minds. Okay. And what happens is a lot of times we get stuck in age with just the skills that we have. We think that what we have is what we have. Who I am is who I am. You don't like me, take me or leave me, right? That's kind of a fixed mindset, right? We're looking at, we know what we can contribute and we're good with just contributing what we contribute. All right. We really think about just giving up, checking out. If those challenges arise that would make us need to re-navigate, hate mistakes, because again, if I'm not good at this, then what am I good at? Because that's all I'm good at, right? And so that's a really fixed mindset. The difference is the growth mindset. All right, and this is those lifelong learners, understanding that your skills are grown and developed. All right, really being able to use feedback as learning opportunities, treating mistakes as learning opportunities, not getting off the horse when things get tough. Okay, and to be proactive, we have to be willing to jump into a growth mindset. All right, we have to be willing to persevere, because again, we may not know exactly where we're heading, right? We're not expecting results, right? We just want to be proactive on our approach to it. And that does require a growth mindset, right? And the effort you put in every day. All right, if it's just a fixed one, again, we're not necessarily growing anywhere. So think about that when you consider the effort that you put in on a day-to-day basis. And I don't just mean effort in the realm of your job. I mean effort in all hats that you wear. Okay, all hats. If you're a mom, if you're a dad, if you're a brother, a sister, all right, son or daughter, everything, right? Maybe you're a coach. Maybe there's so many hats we all wear. We're very busy society is what it seems like. But think about it. So I'd like to know from you, all right, and as the responses come in, I'm going to pause for a second and I'll let Paul take over, but I'd like to know what's one thing related to attitude or effort that you've taken control over in the last year, and how's it helped? All right, I'd like to kind of learn from each other here. So if you don't mind putting those in chat for me, we'll kind of keep an eye on it. I know that sounds like a lot to type. You can keep it concise. I'll tell you one thing that I really did learn over the last year was the consumption, right? When it comes to attitude, my consumption of things, because I truly was the one that was watching the news every single day, looking at social media, scanning all the latest news on COVID and numbers. And I have family out of state and trying to figure out what's going on there. And I took control over that, and I limited myself to one 30-minute news segment a day. And then I limited my screen time as well. All right, and let me tell you, it really did work wonders. Okay, it really did work wonders. And it helped me to focus on the things that were more important to me than the negative consumption that I was having. Okay, what about you, Paul?
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that I did in the last year that I think was really helpful for me is, as things were less predictable around the world, I tried to have a more predictable schedule. So I tried to become more like, okay, I'm going to get up by this time and I'm going to try to go to bed by this time. I'm going to have meals like this. Like, it seemed really small, but because I'm probably more naturally like, I'll go to bed when I want to, and whenever I'm hungry, that's when I'll have lunch.
Sure.
But having some predictable things in my life really helped.
Perfect. Thanks for sharing, Paul. I appreciate it. I'm seeing a lot of those chats come in too now.
Yeah, I'm just going to start sharing. So thinking about how complaining impacted me and whether that worked or not, and learning to ask for help, prioritizing self-care, understanding how that affects your attitude, learning how to take things in stride when you can't control them and taking a deep breath, being less defensive and more praising to my partner, limiting watching the news and making understanding how it has a negative outlook on my life, thinking about self-talk.
Great things there.
Yeah, some really great stuff here.
Yeah.
Setting boundaries.
Oh, I like that, Karen. I saw the one come in here. It said being compassionate with yourself and with others. We don't do that enough, do we? All right, we don't do that enough. And I know, I'll tell you, they used to, I think back in the day, it was you leave work, home at home. When you're at work, you're at work. And there's really not that defined line anymore, right? Everything has kind of become all inclusive. So being compassionate with yourself and treating the whole person, right? Treating the whole person. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for moderating all those for me.
Yeah, there's some great stuff in here. If folks haven't a chance to look there, you might find something someone else did that was really helpful for them.
Absolutely. Yep. That's exactly where we're going with it. We're learning from each other here. That's the idea with this. So please take a moment to go through all those chats, and maybe it's something you would like to implement. Maybe it's something you want to try that's helped another person out. So thank you all for sharing, and thank you all for learning from each other as well. All right. So the next element here, we've talked about understanding who we are, talked about the control piece. Now we're going to talk about this quickly. We'll talk about the confidence piece. Okay. And when we talk about confidence, understand that this truly probably almost needs to be, I don't want to say the foundation, but certainly adds a lot of structure to our ability to be proactive. If we don't believe in ourselves or believe in the decisions that we're making, then understand that it's going to be hard to be confident in just kind of going where the horse is going to lead you, right? For the metaphor we used earlier. So think about whatever the setback or the obstacle or the circumstances that's maybe standing in your way, and consider yourself overcoming it. Okay, picture those successes. By picturing and visualizing things before they've actually happened, science actually shows that you receive better results. Okay, and then with result after result after result, we build our confidence and we build our momentum. All right, we have to be willing to understand that we can improve. Okay, we're not just in that fixed mindset set with who we are. Believe in yourself and your ability to improve. All right. When I was little, my parents, of course, always said, you can be anybody that you want to be. You can do anything that you want to do. Yes, when I was little, that was a great concept because I had no idea. That's why I wanted to be a WWE wrestler, right? Understand, again, your strengths. That's where that self-awareness piece, knowing who you are, comes into play. All right. And believing that some of those weakness areas you can improve on. Okay. You may never develop it fully as a strength, but you can still improve it. All right. You can still maybe improve it if it's worth your time, right? Because we're being cognizant now of, again, how much time we're spending on things that maybe aren't getting us the exact results we want. Be willing to fail. And let me own this and say, this is so incredibly difficult for me. So I am a perfectionist. I work at things until I think they were absolutely perfect and there should be no reason to why they would fail. All right. But from failure comes growth. All right. Be willing to accept other people, either whether it's constructive criticism or feedback, whatever word you'd like to use for it, be willing to accept it. Again, even if it's not necessarily something that you're going to move on or you're going to take it at heart. All right. Say thank you. All right. And just know that information's there for you. All right. Be willing to jump out and take risks. Now, I'm not saying go and jump out of an airplane or anything. All right. Take risks that are in accordance with new opportunities. When I joined MTI, this was a risk. Again, my background, journalism, justice system. I had never imagined that I could be a trainer and consultant. All right, for an organization that works with businesses, for a for-profit organization that works for businesses, because I'd always worked in the public sector. It was a risk. It was a risk, and I jumped on it, okay? If you don't do it, rest assured that the answer is always no, okay? The answer will always be no. So take the risk. The worst they can say is no, okay? Now, let's talk a little bit about this. Okay, because understand that the way in which we communicate is also make or breaking our confidence sometimes. So start taking audit of the words that you're using. And I want to give you an example of what I mean by that. You may hear sometimes folks saying things like, there's nothing I can do. All right, that's a really reactive response, to it. There's nothing I can do. I'm a product of my circumstances, right? It'll always be this way. Instead of pausing and saying, how about we look at some alternatives? Okay, because I bet there is something that you can do, even if it's maybe shifting that attitude or that effort towards whatever it is. All right, some other things. That's just the way I am. Oh, he makes me so mad. Well, they won't allow that. It's not within policy. I can choose a different approach. Okay, I have power over this. Okay, I am not just the way I am. If I want to choose to be a little different, I can choose to be a little different. I had a lot of talking about, I mean, all of us, I'm sure everyone on this meeting has had something just so difficult over the last year that they tried to overcome, whether it was trying to be a parent and homeschool the kids, and maybe you had loved ones that had gotten COVID and were sick, or loved ones that maybe even passed away. All right. And I just thought, I'll own that. I had some of that too. And I thought to myself, man, it's always going to be like this. All right, I'm just going to be sad from now on. But that's a very reactive response. Okay, so instead we had to look at what's a different approach to this. What do I need to do to pull myself out of bed every day? All right, think about it. We don't want to put our control onto others. People can't make us feel any certain way. So in that example of making me so mad, no, you're mad and you have that feeling and you have the right to that feeling, but he didn't do it. Okay, so we need, and we'll talk about that in emotional intelligence if you're interested in joining us for the Facebook group. But think about these things, okay? Reactive versus proactive responses. All right, I can't. Oh, that's probably one of my least favorite reactive responses. All right, I choose. If I choose not to, then I'm choosing not to do it. Not because I can't, because I choose not to. All right. So here's some examples, some things to think about when you're considering your language on a daily basis. Okay. The last piece to this, tracking and strategizing. Okay, we have to be willing to kind of look back a little bit. What's working? What's not working? And for a long time, I will honestly say I never appreciated the value in this and until I've gotten to this point in my career. All right. And I think that it's important for us to set a way to track our progress, because if we're not, then what are we doing it for? All right. We want to be able to reap the benefits of our all of our hard work. Okay. And we can do that if we have a proper strategy in place. And so when we think about being able to track and to strategize, we need to consider what barriers are kind of getting in our way. All right, that busy work we talked about earlier. All right, when we think about busy work, it can prevent us from reaching those long-term goals. And here's the hard part. There is actually something out there called a completion bias. Okay, completion bias. And what completion bias is means that those small tasks, we reap, our brain reaps a reward, if you will. It sends endorphin, the dopamine, to our brain anytime we complete a task. And so that's why we tend to focus on small tasks so that we can get those done and kind of get that burst of adrenaline, that feel good from completing the task. It's called completion bias. And that completion bias will actually prevent us from accomplishing sometimes those long-term goals because you're not getting the reward for it right away. It may take time. All right. And so you need to understand if that's a barrier in your life, that busy work, all right, reflect, audit, change. Think about the goals and how you're setting them. Set realistic goals and effective goals for really what you're trying to achieve. And I mean this in professional and personal life. All right, figure out how you're going to track it. You know, I really, if you weren't able to sit on Ray's accountability, I'm hopeful that Paul and Susan will have us back maybe next year and we can do another one because her accountability class is incredible. And one of the things that she talks about with tracking progress is again that scoreboard and how we're setting it up. We tend to too many times create these kind of unactionable goals where it's like finalize something, right? What does that look like? What does that sound like? How am I going to know when that's done? All right. And we oftentimes do that with our goals. So if we aren't really making them specific, then it's going to be really hard to track them. Okay. So understand when you're setting all of these goals, think about the ways in which you're going to track them as well. And another barrier that we tend to have difficulty with is uncertainty. We don't like to sit in the unknown for a while. As human beings, that's how we are now. We don't like the unknown. And so with not being able to handle it appropriately, feeling discomfort with it, we try to make decisions really quick. All right, we try to move so we can move on and it's not sitting there. All right, understand if that's a barrier for you because you may be missing something. All right, when you're all looking at all this, all right, when you're looking at those barriers and you're looking at this tracking, ask yourself, what's surprising you? Okay, you're looking back at your scorecard, whether it's for that month or that year. All right, what's working? What's not working? What's getting in your way? And how do you want to move forward? Okay, how do you want to move forward? Bear in mind when you're doing this reflection piece. I like to use the metaphor of like a car. The reflection piece is kind of like your rear view mirror, right? Very small. Okay, very small. And then your focus, right? Your goal setting, where you want to go, your big window, right? Your that's large. So spend a little bit of time on reflection, but spend a lot of time on how you're moving forward. Okay. So with that, I also just need to mention this. It's great to be proactive. Okay. It can be a double-edged sword though. We need to recognize that sometimes proactivity can be looked at as obnoxious. So you need to consider your tact, and you need to be able to maybe rein it in a little bit if it's coming off that way to those you're trying to influence. And for supervisors and managers, if you're trying to help your folks understand when that proactivity is appreciated, you're going to have to give them some support, all right? Because there may be certain times you like it, and there may be certain times that you don't. And just being able to communicate that with your employees is critical, because you may have that go-getter who just is going to try and be proactive on everything, and it starts maybe demotivating the rest of your employees. So when we think about this element too, I don't know if we have a lot of supervisors on here, we need to consider these pieces here for developing that proactivity. Culture of trust and empowerment, that starts with you. Being willing to challenge and set the tone that we want new ideas, right? Being able to say there's no wrong idea. Maybe we encourage flexible work hours, implement the what's our options. You know, I used to have a supervisor that would say, if you come to me with a problem, then have some solutions readily available too. And I like that, all right? I like the idea of what's our options here. Not don't come to me unless you have it, but just what are some options, or maybe coaching them through that. And then always rewarding those proactive, healthy behaviors. It's incredibly important. So as we're finishing up here, I want to just ask you, and please start putting this in chat while I finish up, what's one way you're currently practicing proactivity, or you plan to practice proactivity? All right, if you put that in chat for me as I finish up, then we'll come back to it if we have a couple minutes. I'd also like to see if we have other folks on this call who maybe work in the same department. Make sure you're holding your colleagues to it, right? That's kind of this idea. Let's be each other's accountability partner. So start putting those in chat for me. I just want to summarize by saying, understand that this idea of proactivity, it's a posture. It's a posture that you take towards the world. All right, that we are going to be people that will act rather than be acted upon. And the cool part about it is that no one and nothing can ever take that away from you. Okay, they don't get to take away your freedom to choose. So with that, I'll say, again, if you have questions too, along with telling me kind of what you plan to do moving forward, please put those in chat. Paul, what do we got coming in?
A comment about blocking time at the end of the day to write out a to-do list, working to change language to be more reactive than reactive, planning for the fall. Some good thoughts there about thinking ahead, really. Trying to manage planning with the fact that we have ever-changing schedules. You have to be flexible. So some of it is planning to be flexible, as opposed to being upset that you have to be flexible, probably.
Sure. I like that. I think that the last year has really challenged us to do that, right? To understand and embrace flexibility. So that's really neat. Yeah, sounds like good stuff coming in. Again, share with your colleagues, right? Hold each other accountable if you work in the same department. So let's take care of each other. And I just really want to say thank you. Thank you all again for working through the last year and all of the obstacles we've probably all overcome. Thank you for being on today's training. I really value your all's input, and I appreciate the opportunity to be able to present for you. There's our information. If you'd like any more information, you'll see it on your screen. That's how you can contact me. And I just want to say thank you all. And I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful rest of your week.